Hello everybody, how are you doing? Okay, welcome to edition 7 of the Running YouTuber News. This week I thought I'd just follow up on the Valencia Marathon and also some news of my own race against John Broome in the British Masters 5K. Somewhat towards the rear of the field, I have to say. But anyway, it was a good battle. Spoiler alert, I lost by 5 seconds. Anyway, let's crack into the Valencia Marathon. So first up, we got Ben Felton. Ben is running. Now, he's got 116,000 subscribers, I think 1,000 more than last week. Now, he was very pleased with his race. He didn't quite do a PB. He was literally out by a mere 7 seconds. I got him, and he was just the wrong side of my prediction. I predicted 2:24:30 and he came in 2:24:53. Now, considering he did a 7 seconds second best ever time, he seemed very pleased with the effort. I think he's had a lot of problems this year relatively, and if you recall in Berlin, it wasn't that great relatively for him. I think what he did here is actually run a much better controlled race. If you look at the splits here, I've got the app up here on the right side of the screen. He went through halfway in 72:15. Whereas I think in Berlin, he was actually under 71 minutes. So basically, he was able to keep that pace up. And he only had a very gradual, slight slowing at the end. Just missed out, I think, in that 5K 35:40. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a very good effort from Ben and just shows you that he did a huge amount of mileage. I think he was, as I said last week, he was doing over 100 miles a week in parts of the block. So just goes to show how much you can improve if you put your mind to it in about 2 months, isn't it? So yeah, Adios Pro 4s he was wearing. Now he did get a bit of a bloody toe. I think he said it didn't cut his toenails. So I think there's been a few rumours on the internet that the Adios Pro 4 cuts up people's toes. But yeah, if you basically don't cut your toenails, then you're going to struggle, aren't you? So yeah, excellent run from Ben, and I think he's now having a bit of a holiday, and no doubt we'll find out what his next moves are. I think he's in for London Marathon, as I recall. So next up, we got Ryan Thomson. Now, he did very well. He's probably the best of all the good YouTubers, shall we say. Did a 2:15:44 on chip time. The Strava there says 2:15:47. I don't think he's yet done a video, so I'm just going to show his Strava. So look at some of his pictures here. He's here looking very pleased. Looks like he wore his Scotland vest, and that's his girlfriend, I believe. I think she did about 3:30, so well done to her. And there's Ryan's splits, which is sort of like what I'm viewing here. So yeah, excellent run. I think I predicted a 2:17 dead, so I wasn't far out, but I think it's always good when people do better than my predictions. And at this level, it's kind of almost easier to predict things because people have much more experienced runners know far better where they're at and what sort of pace they're going at. But they still got to deliver on the day, haven't they? Let's have a look at these splits here on the app. And he went through halfway in 1:7:23. And if you recall last week, I said he was going to be going out 15:50 to 16 minutes per 5K. And it was very close to that. He was just under that pace at 15K, at 20K. Still on 16 minutes at 25K. Just went out a bit after that, didn't he? But yeah, very good. I think that was pacing it for a sub 2:15. But yeah, 2:15:47 and a 3-minute PB at this level is a huge achievement, and that's really going to bump him up. I think he was the 6th fastest British athlete in the race. The fastest was Dan Nash doing a 2:12:59 on chip time. So great running all round, I would say. So if you recall last week, I wasn't quite sure whether Nick Harris-Fry was going to be running because he seemed to be doing a lot of biking when he perhaps should be doing easier runs. And sure enough, he left a comment on my video, and I found his Instagram here where he basically tells the story. He just had a bit of a niggle, twisted his ankle in the taper, and despite best efforts, he couldn't actually find enough in him to actually get on the line. So it's a sensible decision to pull out, and I think his next target will be London. This is a picture of him here in the 10K in Paris when he did his second best ever time of 32 minutes, as I recall. And it looks like they've got the Hoka Rocket X2s on there, so obviously a firm favourite. I thought he preferred the Metaspeed Skies, but maybe he's got to test out different shoes. Anyway, best of luck to Nick in recovering. Now, instead of Nick Harris-Fry, we did have another of the run testers here, Tom Wheatley. Now, he ran 3:14:45, so it wasn't the best day out for Tom. It doesn't look like he was really serious about his marathon training, I have to say. Well, he had done some pretty decent races recently. I saw he did 37:43 in the Brighton 10K and an 85:18 half marathon. So, yeah, he should have had the fitness, but maybe just lacking a bit of mileage. And he was wearing the Metaspeed Sky, so it doesn't necessarily say a great deal about that shoe. But it looked like he basically set off to do a sub-3, was through halfway in 1:28:55 here according to the app, but then he sort of then struggled a bit, didn't he, really? And yeah, went out to a 3:14. So yeah, a good effort from Tom, but maybe he wasn't quite had his heart in this, and yeah, can't always do a good time, can you? I'm sure he'll be back for another fine race soon. Now, when I follow the race, I always look out for some elite athletes, and I was a bit puzzled by Jake Smith. He seemed to go out very well, looked to be on a huge sort of PB quest. He was on here 2:829 pace, and he seemed to slow drastically, and I thought, well, maybe just blown up, but no, it looks like what he deliberately did 25k as a sort of pacemaker, although he says here that he was just running on his own. So solo front running pacing. So I wasn't quite sure whether he was an official pacemaker or not. But interesting, on his second bit of Strava here, I was a bit puzzled with this. He did 9 further miles. So I think he just split it up into 2, and he then dropped the pace to about 5:45 soon. And it turns out he was pacing his sister, who's called Molly Smith. Now, I've never actually heard of Molly Smith, but she did an amazing 2:31.46 here. So here's Molly Smith on Run Britain. She's got a handicap of 0.2, and she's currently 208th amongst the women in the UK on the national ladder. If we scroll down, now actually her chip time was just fractionally faster there, 2:31.43. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because that's the best part of a 5-minute PB over London, and it was actually a faster time than what looks like a half marathon PB, 75.49 in Brighton in February. So that's remarkable. And if we scroll down a bit further, then it seems that she was basically an English schools athlete back at school in around 2015, 2016 in Somerset. But yeah, did a few BMC races, but nothing sort of particularly amazing, only just getting under 5 minutes. So yeah, to go from that sort of standard to a 2:31 marathon in 8 years is something else, isn't it? And just goes to show you, perhaps like Philly Bowden, if you put the work in, then you can really make hay, as it were. And if you look at the splits here on the app, then metronomic pacing, wasn't it? I mean, 1:16.04, just a very slight negative split by the looks of that. So yeah, well done her. Now here's a channel I haven't actually featured before, The Running Man in Blue, where blue I think is the Barnsley AC. Now this is really Gareth Cook, but in this particular video, his partner, Naomi Drakeford, was actually running. Gareth has been injured recently and decided not to start. So yeah, Naomi's a very fine runner. She has a PB of 2:46.50, and they often sort of have the first two men and women in races. And I think the London Marathon this year, Naomi did 2:46.50 and Gareth was 2:24.35. So if there's a faster husband and wife team on that particular day, it's unlikely. So there she is in blue there. Just a bit of footage. It looks like a bit like the Alpha Fly 1 she's got on her feet there. But she's had a bit of an injury recently, so she has a curtailed block. So she managed to get around in 2:49.05. I think she was basically very pleased with that and definitely gave it her all. If you look at the splits here, 1:22.59 at halfway. So she was sort of gunning for a PB at halfway, but just the lack of training relatively told, isn't it? And then just a slight slowing in the second half. But yeah, a very fine effort. It just goes to show sometimes that if you don't have the fitness, but you are a committed runner, then the best thing to do is just sort of get out there and see what happens, because it's always a learning curve. And if you don't do a PB, well, maybe the second best, a bit like Ben Felton's, do your second best of a time, which I think this was for Naomi. And yeah, so it's a very fine run. And it's quite a long video, this one, but it takes you through the whole story from the pre-race bit to the post-race bit. And I think they've only just returned from Valencia, so having a bit of a holiday. I did actually think there wasn't too much, if any, coverage of the floods in Valencia, which perhaps was good. I was expecting some sort of potential problems with the locals, but you didn't really see any of the sort of devastation that occurred. I mean, I'm interested to know from people who were there what sort of vibes you were getting. Certainly, all the videos I saw about the race, it was very much focused on the race, and yeah, all the footage you see of people walking around, well, you wouldn't have thought that there was terrible floods literally maybe a mile or two away from this a couple of weeks ago, would you? Now, Andy Maguire here, it's on Andy. He did a very fine run. He did a PB of 3:21.01. I think he was secretly hoping for a sub 3:21, he was saying. So basically, he was 2 seconds out. So I'm not quite sure you can be disappointed with that. I think I'd predicted a 3:20 exactly. So I was pretty good with my prediction, wasn't he? And he kindly left a comment on my previous video last week to say he deliberately didn't watch my video until he'd actually done the race because it might put him off. And yeah, you kind of think, well, these are people I don't know at all. And unlike, say, John Broome and Andy Rayner, people I've now met and had regular dialogue with offline, as it were, these are people that are more strangers, as it were. And I think you get to know these people and over time, but only sort of you watching their videos and me commenting on their videos, maybe reciprocating that as well. So yeah, a very fine run from Andy. Have a look at the splits here. He was through halfway in 1:40.58. So yeah, that's a very slight negative split, isn't it? So that's fine running. And looks like the 5Ks were just under the 25-minute mark. Well, actually a bit closer to 24, to be honest. But yeah, I think for what was his PB before? I think it was about 3:36 in Newport earlier this year. So to take 15 minutes off in the same year is quite something. So I think it's a sort of runner that probably has a sub-3 in him if he can get some good training in and build on from there. Next up is Anya Culling. Now, this video came out after I did my video last week where she basically did a bit of a preview podcast with Ben Parker there as a special edition of the Runner podcast. Now, I picked up from this that Anya was thinking that she could do a sub 2:45. And I think maybe that's been pessimistic because she actually did a 2:42.08. So that was her fourth best marathon, the best marathon since Berlin last year. So it's just over a year ago. So yeah, a good return to form for Anya. I predicted a 2:40 and have a friend who predicted a bit slower than that. And I won the bet. He has to buy me a coffee the next time we meet. So yeah, my spog face on there. But yeah, fine run from Anya, I think. Let's have a look at her splits here. She went halfway in 1:19.52. So it did say in this video that her boyfriend said, why don't you just go for it? And it looks like she did, actually. I mean, that was on sub 2:40 form at halfway. And I was thinking, well, with that split, am I going to get my prediction absolutely spot on? Just a very slight slowing in the second half, as you often find in marathons. I think it's quite normal. I did my own PB with a 3-minute positive split, as it were, and I think at the time I didn't think that a negative split was necessarily the way to go. I think I've done the negative splits more recently as I've got slower because I'm always frightened to blow up. So it's more like you don't want to hurt yourself too much in the first half and have a terrible second half. So maybe it's a bit of experience there, maybe a bit of realism of where you're actually at. I think, you know, in the days of now, you've got so much more sort of feedback on where you're at. When I was back in 2005, I didn't really have a proper GPS. I got the Garmin Runner 201, but it was pretty bad GPS, and it was in hindsight, it was terrible compared to the ones now. You would get track logs which are all over the place, and if you saw it in my back history on Strava and you think I'm running a 3-minute mile, I think it's because it doesn't really interpolate it correctly on Strava. So yeah, if I got any course records for that time, they probably are correct because I was a lot faster then. But yeah, you might think I need to flag that one. So I noticed that Anya is now in Hawaii, of all places. So she's certainly getting about. I mean, maybe that's a holiday, I'm not sure. But yeah, well done to Anya, and I look forward to seeing what she could do next. She did seem to imply that she's going to take running a bit more seriously next year. I think maybe London's on the cards. So yeah, I mean, obviously she's a London person, isn't she? So does a lot of running in Battersea Park. I think she's almost the local legend in Battersea Park. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if she can get back to it. I think, as I said last week, I think she's just a bit lacking in mileage, and she's done a lot of triathlons. I hadn't realised she did one of those 100 something races recently in Dubai, of all places, I think. So that probably didn't help. But yeah, I think she can get back to about 80 miles a week and concentrate on the running. I suppose it just depends on what you want to do, doesn't it? I mean, she's now more of a sort of a general influencer in the fitness space, and although she's associated with a runner, I think getting the triathlons out as well increases her brand exposure for sure. Now, William Fu the Woo on YouTube, I don't think he's done a video yet, so let's have a look at his Strava. He was agonisingly close to sub 3 hours again, and he says here it's the hardest race of his life. I can't tell you how much I hurt. Proud to have given my all. I think that's a very good, fine effort. I didn't think it was quite in sub 3 form, but yeah, I think I predicted 3:05, so he was actually better than my prediction. We're in the Adios Pro 3s there, but yeah, I mean, look at these splits. They just went out at the end, didn't they, agonisingly. And if you look on the app as well, just sort of went out to us just a 7-minute mile pace at the end. So he was pretty close, but maybe just didn't have the commitment early on, did he? I mean, what was his halfway? Yeah, his halfway was actually 1:30.22. So if you're not quite feeling it, to actually have to do a massive negative split, I think that's going to be a tough ask. But yeah, a very fine effort, and look forward to seeing his video for sure. Now, Kelly Ruck here, when I saw her split at halfway at 1:51.25, I thought she was going to be on for an amazing time. But having spoken to Matt a bit, my coach, who's obviously her partner, I think she didn't quite follow the plan. I think she went out a bit too hot, and it was, as you can see in that picture, very hot. So perhaps an athlete that doesn't really sort of relish the warmth, but a very fine effort from Kelly, I would say. I mean, she did say in her previous video, didn't she, that she got a sub 4 and this was a bit more of a fun one, and she was there on her own. So I think that's quite a daunting prospect. I mean, when I've done my marathons, I've always had Sue on hand at the start and the end. So to do one on your own is quite lonely, although I did see that Ben Felton did that. So yeah, so I just think when it's the biggest race, I always like to have Sue there with me. And if you saw the 5K at Battersea, then she was. So let's have a look at these splits. Yeah, 1:51 at halfway, and yeah, I mean, it just was a bit unfortunate that didn't quite manage to keep that going. She set off at quite an alarming speed. I mean, that was not far off a 5K speed recently, wasn't it? You know, low 8-minute miling, and unfortunately, it started to go 9s, then 10s, and then 11s. But yeah, I guess that's what happens in the marathon sometimes. You give it your all, And it looked like there was a bit of stop-start there, because if you look at the cadence, yeah, they did look like a few walk breaks there. But yeah, it's always good, I think, when you know it's not your day, to actually still get round. And I think that's one of Kelly's best times, nevertheless. So yeah, well done to Kelly, and look forward to seeing your next one for sure. Now, I completely overlooked last week that Ben Parks and also Sarah Place, his partner, were running Valencia. It's normally his favourite race, and he did all right. He didn't seem to be sort of really going for it this year. He did 2:48.47. That was just fractionally slower than the 2:48.32 did in London, but it seemed to be a remarkably well-paced run. He was basically on just under 4 minutes per K there all the way. So did look to see that he was just trying to get a good solid run out and no particular targets. And he doesn't even say on his Strava here what his real aims were. So yeah, interesting one. I mean, I do find it strange that sometimes that people do marathons almost as training runs, but yeah, I mean, I did think that maybe he hasn't done a huge amount of mileage recently, but he does love running marathons, doesn't he? You have to say. And yeah, you can't really argue with the 2:48. It's been a long time since I've managed a sub 2:48, and yeah, he seems to be able to knock these things out. But whether he'll ever get back to the 2:25 marathon he did back in 2018, it's got to be questionable now. But I think he's kind of moved on from looking at that as being the sole defining thing of his YouTube stuff. And yeah, his YouTube stuff is getting ever bigger. He hasn't done a video on this one as yet, but yeah, well past the 200k. And I always notice when he does shoe reviews and stuff, he tends to get the most views out, and he also buys his own shoes. So yeah, don't really think of him as a shoe tuber, but when he does shoe reviews, always a good one to watch. And he's only a size less than me, so I should definitely watch out for the shoes that he likes. I think in this one, I'm not sure, he doesn't say what shoes he was in. I'm not sure if it's the Alpha Fly 3 or the Vaporfly 3. Anyone let me know in the comments. Now, as I said, his partner Sarah Place was also running, and she did an agonisingly 4 hours and 3 seconds, but she was well off the 3:19.19 that she did as a PB back in 2019. I think she's had quite a lot of injuries in the recent times, so I think she was just really pleased to be able to actually get round a marathon. So yeah, well done to her. And if it's not quite at 3:59.59, well, it doesn't really matter, does it? I think the important thing when you have an injury, like I found myself, that you just need to get back to form and get into it. And I think actually getting back to racing, it almost puts the monkey off your back, because you realise that you're not going to be in good form. And sometimes you just need to realise that, and actually getting out and racing actually helps you to get back to form. I started off 3 weeks ago with the 21 minutes, and then I got a sub 20 at the park run, and then knocked it down to a 19:36 in Battersea Park on Sunday. Looking at her splits here, yeah, she actually did a slight negative split, having said that. She was 2 hours 46 at halfway. So yeah, it was clearly a well-controlled effort nonetheless. So yeah, maybe just need a bit more of a sprint finish to get that sub 4. But as I said, it doesn't really matter, does it? Now, a few people have put me on in the comments to a guy here called Adam Wood from the States. Now, I perhaps haven't seen him because he hadn't really raced outside the States very much, but he's a very fine runner, 2:18 PB, and it wasn't quite on that shape this time. He got a 2:20.15, but you see there at halfway he was on 1:9.11, so he certainly gave it everything he had. Don't think he's done a post-run race video yet, so I'm just putting a bit of B-roll up from his pre-race video, as it were, and he's clearly already in Valencia, so yeah, maybe he's just taking a bit of holiday out for that. But yeah, it's always a bit odd, isn't it, when you say 2:20 is a bit disappointing. I suppose it's all relative, because whatever your PB is, you always want to sort of get around that and try your best. So yeah, a very fine run, but sometimes you just need to think, well, yeah, it's a good solid effort and build for the next time. Now, this is an interesting video, I thought. This is Chloe Harmad. She wasn't actually running in Valencia, but her boyfriend, I was going to assume it's a boyfriend, not husband, Ben McIntosh, ran. Now, he was a bit camera shy, Ben. He does actually appear later, but I thought it was quite amused that earlier on, Chloe said they didn't want to appear on camera. And maybe he was just getting focused for the race. And it was a good run from Ben, but he had a few problems. He said, like, almost straight away, he felt a bit of a calf issue, which he's had, and he struggled on. I mean, he went through halfway in 1:10.20. His PB is actually 2:23.54. So short glimpses of him while Chloe trails around Valencia. Is this him again as well? Well, that must be the guy in the lead. So here he goes again. Yeah, I think what happened, he said in the video, he went out hard in the first half, realised that he wasn't quite going to bring it home, eased off a bit, and it was, yeah, another good effort to actually finish off the race. So easy to break down, isn't it? And he's a bit disappointed, clearly, but I mean, he's only 3 minutes off his PB, and despite the fact he seems to have come into this race with a bit of a niggle, I mean, it's another example of sometimes you just need to take a bit of a risk with these things. Sometimes it can pull off, and sometimes the marathon can find you out. But yeah, I mean, you can never really be disappointed when you're just 3 minutes off your PB. and he seems young enough to have plenty more goes at it. So yeah, well done to Ben, and it's good to actually see him on the video talking at the end. So it would be good, I think, sometimes these channels where both the male and the female of the duo do it. I think they turn out to be the most popular one, like the running brooms. Ben Felton often has his girlfriend on there, doesn't it? And people seem to like it when Sue appears. So yeah, maybe he'll come on there a bit more often in future. He's certainly a very good runner. So Steph McCall from 5 Miles Easy here, that she did a pre-race video. I don't think I've seen a post for race one yet. I put her down for a 2:45 without really any indication where she was at, and it looks like she was on that sort of pace at halfway in 1:21:27, but unfortunately, she struggled a bit and came home in 2:51:23 as against a PB of 2:44:35. So yeah, another sort of valiant effort from a runner here at a very good level, but just didn't perhaps have it. I'm not quite sure why. She doesn't really have a Strava to actually delve into it, probably just as well. But I imagine there'll be a podcast where she goes over it and tells us everything about that. So yeah, I look forward to hearing a bit more about how the race went. Okay, let's move on from Valencia. Just a few snippets of random news that I found here. Great to see that Anna Harding from the Running Channel has had a baby now, 6 months on from it, and hopefully we'll see her back on the Running Channel, and looks like she's keen to get back into proper running. She's already started doing some running, talking about doing PBs, so that's great to hear. I always did like Anna on the Running Channel, and you always sort of forgot that she was one of the original ones, wouldn't you? So yeah, look forward to seeing if she appears more often, and congratulations on the baby. And a bit of my own news, I managed to, as I said earlier, I managed to do the Battersea Park British Masters 5K, and here comes Sue with her pink Pegasus. And we also managed to meet up with the running brooms, and here they are with Sue behind the camera. John's got his Insta360 Go 3 on, and I tried mine out for the first time. And it was a royal battle between John and me. He just pipped me at 19:31 to 19:36. We were basically running side by side for a lot of the race. I think took a slight lead. John had a canny stay behind me for a bit, and yeah, he just pushed on in the last mile basically. And he said he wasn't going to leave it to my sprint finish, remembering my sort of track days. And John also did a video of this, and his views were really good actually. I think he overall did better than my one. So yeah, it's kind of odd where you seem to feature more on somebody else's video than your own one. But maybe we should have had more on Sue on that one. But yeah, great to see John's channel is growing, and Dawn as well. Dawn ran well as well, 21 minutes in her age category. I think for once Dawn was up against some really class runners in her age group. So Claire Elms, I think, won in 18 minutes. Showed John and me a clean pair of heels for sure, and looked like I'm going out on some sort of rave then. That's a Gore-Tex top, and yeah, Sue was on hand to give a bit of sights and sounds in this first video, and I did a second video where I did basically a point of view footage, and John did just one video featuring both of them. So yeah, go and check out all our videos. And in my second video, I had some great interviews with some of the older athletes here. Here's Peter Giles, set a new UK record for M80s. 22 minutes 21 seconds, something like that. So it was interesting with him that he hadn't really done much running as a youngster. He was a professional musician, and his PB for a 5K is only 17 minutes. So it just goes to show that you can really come on later in life if you maybe don't sort of tie yourself up too much. We also had Susan Garner from Lingfield. She was up there in the W75s. And also the second placer, Dave Moore-Kite in the M80s. Now, it turns out he was a professional footballer for Maidstone United. So amazing what people's backgrounds, isn't it? And Sue was saying that she's a senior nurse, so I think he needs a nurse. Then his wife appeared, Janice Moore-Kite. She's a W65. She didn't perhaps do quite as well as she'd hoped, but it turned out she'd raced across country the day before. So yeah, can't have everything, can you? But David was saying that he runs about 4 or 5 times a week. So yeah, that's incredible, isn't it, at that age? Just goes to show that if you can keep going, you can still run very well. Here's a chat with my friend Joseph Gonzalez, who was third in the M55s. Looked a bit steamed up there with his glasses. And also had a chat with Mark Symes, who was the winner of the M55, my category. He was mid-16s, I think. So, yeah, it's a bit depressing that I was best part of 3 minutes behind, if not more. But, yeah, he's pretty much the best runner, certainly at short distance in the country for his age. So, yeah, and I think another one who hadn't done a huge amount when he was younger. So maybe that's the secret. But, yeah, I mean, he's running times now that I would have been pleased with on many days when I was at my best in my 20s, and he's, 30 years older and more. So he's looking to do an indoor season. Anyway, I better sign off with me and Sue signing off in this video. So I hope you found this interesting. Like and subscribe and all that, and see you on the next one then. Bye!